There is a case filed in another country against President Rajapaksa or any of his brothers or his military commanders, their popularity back home increases tremendously. We have to find a solution for this phenomenon. We have to not just inform the world outside, but also the people back home, our Sinhala brethren. The true picture must be shown to them. And very little has been done in that respect. And in the last couple of years, the TNA has taken a few steps, very few steps forward to try and educate the majority community what really the conflict is. If we don't tell them, they get a distilled form of information from the Sinhala politicians. They tell them what the Tamils want. They are frightening them that the Tamils are trying to divide the country. Well, we did do that. But in the present context, we have very clearly articulated our stand to the government of Sri Lanka. We have articulated our stand to the international community, to everyone, that we are willing to find a solution within an undivided country. That is our right. Our right to self-determination can be exercised in that manner internally. And Canadian Supreme Court again has given us the jurisprudence as to what happens if that is denied. But that's another matter. But for the moment, I think it is fair to say that the Tamil National Alliance has demonstrated to the world that we were in fact genuine and serious about our negotiations with the government of Sri Lanka to find a solution through negotiations within a united country. We stayed in that process despite criticism, mainly from outside the country, that we were engaged in a process that we knew would fail. Well, we were not altogether optimistic even when we started the process. But we engaged ourselves in that process because that was the right thing to do. Our people elected us with a particular mandate, and we had to inform the government of Sri Lanka that we have this mandate and to enter into negotiations with us. There are many who have for the last 1 year told us that we must not continue with the dialogue with the government of Sri Lanka, that we must leave the negotiation process. My question has been, well, we can leave the negotiations. That's very easy to do. What do we do after that? What do we do after that? Call on the government of Sri Lanka to come and talk to us because we are the legitimate representatives of the Tamil people. We have a responsibility towards the people who have unambiguously elected the Tamil National Alliance based on the manifesto that was presented to them. The people had other options also, as you know. In 2010 April, they had other options also, but they chose to elect the Tamil National Alliance based on the manifesto that was presented to them. And so, whatever anybody said, we had a duty by our people to remain engaged in a process, not in a useless process. And after 1 year, I can tell you very safely that that process has not been useless. You will also recall that during the month of December, President Rajapaksa and some of his ministers who were not engaged in talks with the TNA publicly announced saying that we can't devolve land powers, we cannot devolve police powers, North and East merger is out of the question. And yet, our talks were about the merger on one day, and the next 2 days it was about improving the land powers that were already there in the constitution, how to devolve it more. Then in January, before our talks again, the cabinet had given a direction that the government must not talk to us unless we nominated representatives to the Parliamentary Select Committee. We have steadfastly refused to do that, and are insisting that our agreement with the government must stand. It was in this background that Minister of Foreign Affairs of India, S.M. Krishna, came to Sri Lanka, and he met with us first, then met the President the next day, and then issued a statement. I'm sure most of you would have read his statement. In that he says, President Rajapaksa has assured me that he is committed to implementing the 13th Amendment fully and going beyond the 13th Amendment and making devolution meaningful. Now there is some significance in that statement. Although this is the 5th time President Rajapaksa has given this assurance to India, there is some significance in that statement. Previously, the language of 13 plus was used, even in this statement. In 2 other places 13 plus is used, but this phrase is important because whenever 13 plus was used, there were others who interpreted that and said 13 minus 1 plus 2 is also 13 plus. But this phrase says implement the 13th Amendment fully. Then it says go beyond the 13th Amendment and make devolution meaningful. The very President who said it more than once in the last 1 month that I cannot devolve land powers, I cannot devolve police powers, North and East merger is out of the question, has said this, has apparently said this. There is no refutation from the government. And when Foreign Minister Krishna made this announcement, Foreign Affairs Minister of Sri Lanka, Professor Piris, was standing by his side. All these 3 important issues are part of the 13th Amendment. Under the 13th Amendment, land power is devolved. It specifically says land is a devolved subject. Of course, we are not happy with the extent of devolution there. And that is what we were negotiating for further devolution. But land power is devolved in the 13th Amendment. Police power is devolved. Although there is one aspect of that matter that we are not happy with, by and large, that's a very satisfactory arrangement, albeit on paper, it has never been implemented. And there is provision for a merger in the 13th Amendment. Now, historically, we had rejected the 13th Amendment in 1987 when that was brought about, because that was a sorry apology for the Indo-Lanka Accord, the provisions contained in the Indo-Lanka Accord. That is true. Devolution under the 13th Amendment cannot be called meaningful devolution for a few reasons, primarily for 2 reasons. One is that it is a governor who is appointed by the President, who is the chief executive. So executive power is not really devolved. Legislative power is also not truly devolved, because any statute that is passed by the provincial council must have the assent of the governor. And there are many statutes that have been passed by many provincial councils in the south that have been held up because the governors, the respective governors have held back their assent. The second matter is there is a concurrent list. And also the first item on the reserve list, that is the central government list, is national policy on all subjects. So even divorce subjects, they can pass law calling in, whereas the first line would be whereas it is the national policy of whatever. So it was meaningless. That's why we rejected it. And that is why we have been fighting shy to talk about the 13th Amendment, to say anything about the 13th Amendment. So in times past, when the government sometimes said we will implement the 13th Amendment in full, we have remained silent. 4 times previously, when President Rajapaksa said, I will go beyond the 13th Amendment, I will give 13 plus, we remained silent. That is why when we commenced negotiations with the government, we gave our proposals on the 18th of March last year,